Hello.
Oh, are we recording?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. We're back.
What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the craziness going on in Wisconsin today.
Is this the craziness where they're trying to prime us for the idea that things are more important than our lives and using voting to do it?
I mean, yeah, I would say that that's probably what they're doing. Wisconsin is going ahead with its in-person primary today in the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And
why is this necessary?
well, it's not.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to, if you're not aware, lots of people made mail-in ballot requests, and they had absolutely no ability to actually do the number of ballots that were requested. So there's a giant backlog. A lot of people do not have mail-in ballots right now. So by refusing to move the date of the primary, people basically have no choice but to vote in person at this point.
Yeah, so there are quite a few people that tried to get absentee ballots and they did not get those ballots.
Now, why does it matter if they vote today? Like, what's the issue here?
Well, there's a few issues. One of which, and I think this is actually the less pertinent issue, is that the DNC has basically said that states that postpone their primaries will only get half their delegates. But
okay,
there's
yeah.
actually something else going on too, which we're going to get into. Obviously, going ahead with the Wisconsin primary is a terrible idea, and I mean, not only is it common sense that it's a terrible idea, but we have objective evidence that it's a bad idea. We know from the Florida primary that the coronavirus was directly spread as a result of having the primary. There were 2 poll workers there that were tested positive for coronavirus, and together they had contact with, I think, about 300 people. So that's not good. They were asymptomatic at the time.
Mm-hmm. So
they didn't know they were sick. They went to the polls to do their job, and they probably infected a lot more people. So the Democratic governor of Wisconsin, for a while, didn't do anything. And then yesterday, he attempted to postpone the Wisconsin primary. He attempted to push it back to June. The state legislature, which is Republican, disagreed with him. They took this to the state Supreme Court, which sided with Republicans, and the U.S. Supreme Court also sided with the Republicans, 5-4, to go ahead and proceed with the primaries. So they're proceeding, and it's a horrible mess, as you can probably guess. Milwaukee has a total of 5 polling stations open today, and that's 5 out of 180 normally.
Okay, so we're supposed to be keeping a distance, and then they're just squeezing every single person that wants to actually have their vote counted into 5 locations?
Yeah, they are, and people are trying to social distance. They're trying to, line up 6 feet, apart from each other, but it's still a giant mass of people all together in one space, and you can't social distance perfectly in those kinds of settings.
So, okay, how big is Milwaukee? Just for clarification.
So the total population of Milwaukee is close to 600,000 people.
Okay, so if people actually show up to vote and they
obviously
actually
that's
want
not
to participate,
all voters.
Yeah, I know. But we're talking about the possibility of 70,000 people squeezing through 5 buildings.
Yeah,
today.
it's insane. And apparently a lot of the polling places that are open are in immigrant-heavy communities and the signs that are posted for the polling places are only posted in English. So there's another layer of shittiness to all that.
And, like, if you want to maintain proper distancing, that's like 900 people per mile in line.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, basically.
You did the math.
No,
I'll trust
but, like,
you.
just mentally, like, that's roughly what it is.
Right.
And... Okay.
There's nothing else on top of that.
No, I mean, there is. I just... brain fart.
Oh, okay.
I'm just preoccupied with getting a cozy so that I'm not advertising for Coca-Cola every time I get a drink, and that's in the back of my head. Yeah, so you've got 5 locations. Potentially you've got like 12,000 people wanting to show up at each thing. That's functionally like a 15-mile long line.
Yeah, and I mean,
People aren't going to vote.
Yeah,
They're
there's
going to show
not
up.
going to be that many people.
If
because,
the line is longer than a couple blocks, they're going to go home.
Yeah, and a lot of people aren't even going to try to show up because people are very rightfully scared of catching this virus and getting sick.
Now, going before this, Twitter is full of people that are saying that they will die so that they can vote for Joe Biden. I would walk across broken glass. Like, people who are on his campaign are out there spreading the idea that you should be willing to just die drowning in your own bodily fluids so that Joe Biden will win the primary.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Joe Biden's response to this has been awful. Like, he basically just said, it's probably fine, just go out and vote if you don't have any symptoms. Which is a terrible idea because we all know now that there are many people who are completely asymptomatic.
I don't think you can say we all know that, because... Was it
the governor of Georgia?
Yeah, like 2 days ago was like, what? Didn't fucking know it all.
I don't believe that person, just so you know. I do not believe that the governor... I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but I don't believe they didn't know.
Believing that people are that ignorant right now. I don't.
I mean, maybe.
Like,
but...
with the misinformation going around and the degree of, like, conspiracy theories, I saw somebody just today that's like, oh, you know what? There's a tiger that's sick, and that's proof that this is engineered. Like, and Tiger King coming out is a distraction from what's really going on, and that's why it's tigers getting sick. And...
Wow. That's
like,
quite the theory.
I'm tempted to pull it up and read it, but it
don't.
makes me want to shoot myself.
Yeah, please
It's
don't.
one of
Please
those,
don't
like,
do
bring me a gun, because there's not enough holes in my own head yet.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
I think you were talking about Biden's poor response.
Oh, yeah.
To this.
So Biden has had the worst response. Last I heard, Sanders was calling for a postponement of the primary. And of course that was painted like, oh, he's being so selfish, trying to keep people healthy and safe. It's very selfish. I haven't heard if there have been any new statements from either of them in the last day or two.
I don't think it would matter at this point. Like, they're out there standing in line. There's not anything you can say to make that better.
Yeah. But anyway, the whole thing with this that I haven't seen much mention of in a lot of the news sources that I watch is there is a state Supreme Court seat on the ballot. And the incumbent is a Republican. And it's very important for them to win because there is currently a move in the state legislature that's backed by Republicans to purge voters from the state rolls, which would help Republicans immensely in the general election, in which Wisconsin is considered a battleground state. So this has had some coverage. This information I got from a New York Times article, and we'll link to the sources that we used in the description of the video. So yeah, this is basically an attempt to use voter suppression to be able to do more voter suppression. So this is basically one of the I would say actual significant dichotomies between Democrats and Republicans in general is that many Democrats have long been pushing and are now pushing even harder for a more universal voting system. You know, more mail-in voting, more universal access to polls. And Republicans are constantly trying to put tighter and tighter restrictions on voting because they have admitted themselves that if people were just allowed to vote universally, then no Republican would ever make it into office. Like, Trump literally said this on, it was Fox and Friends. He literally said that the Democrats were trying to push a level of voting that if it were agreed on, you would never have another Republican elected into office ever again. He literally said this.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing to bring up, just because the way that this whole thing works isn't like people even voting for themselves. So, like, if you look at Democrats and Republicans, Republicans are in office to represent 1% of people. And Democrats are in office to represent the 5% of people that own 60% of the wealth. And nobody gives a shit about the other 95% of people.
Well, I think the Democrats count on their historic reputation of being a people's party.
Democrats have convinced you, to use Marx's words, that what you need to focus on is fighting the enemy of your enemy.
Yeah, so they get a lot of people's votes that way, even though they don't represent those people.
Yeah. So I think this whole thing of people showing up, it's more important that you vote for a petty bourgeoisie bastard to be in office than that you be alive. Mm-hmm. It's more important that you show up and you represent the upper middle class that doesn't give a shit about you, that has no policies, that isn't willing to do anything to help you, because apparently $1,200 once is fine.
Yeah.
It's more important that you do that than that you be alive. This is an actual war between the poor rich people and the rich people, and the rich people don't give a shit. They know that nobody supports them because they don't have the mental games to get you to show up and vote, except for, like, abortion and stuff like that. And the Democrats want everybody to vote because the Democrats have the option of playing this necessity of lesser evil.
Mm-hmm.
Look, vote for our scumbag because the other guy wants to eat you. We just want you to slowly die of starvation.
Yeah. Yeah, so this entire thing is basically just like the epitome of this ongoing conflict between Democrats and Republicans to, on the one hand, expand voter rights, and on the other hand, suppress them. And
it still, like, it comes down to the ruling class having to destroy itself to keep progressing.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this shit that we're seeing right now, it still feeds back into that. It's something that we keep bringing up. It's, you know, the banks versus manufacturing. It's landlords versus the Bezos people.
Right, yeah. And looking at this from a Marxist perspective, too, we know that one of the ways that capitalism is able to protect itself is to create class conflicts within the working class. So even though the working class isn't represented by either one of the parties, there is still this artificial class conflict that's created between Republicans and Democrats, and that keeps people so busy at each other's throats that they don't want to unify to
But yeah,
take on the real oppressors.
That's the thing that's going on right now when everybody's talking about how Bernie needs to get out of the race. It's because they want to unify behind the fake enemy, and they're creating a conflict even within their own party to keep people from actually paying attention to the fact that neither party has any reasonable solutions for anything. Like, this whole pandemic has just been a giant show of the fact that we're all running around naked. We have no solutions to any of this.
Yeah, it's been very revealing, and all these conflicts that are kind of pushed on us are also artificial, but people go for them because that's just what we do. We're very tribal.
Yeah.
And if someone's our guy, then we'll crawl over broken glass to vote for them or something.
Yeah, no, and like, I don't know, I've seen so many things in leftist groups talking about how, like, Sanders supporters just need to get out there if they're young and healthy, and they can make it through this if they get sick. No.
Yeah, no, fuck no.
You.
Don't go to the polls. I mean, I know it's a little late now, but don't go to the polls.
Yeah. And this narrative, this is going to become part of it. People are going to go, oh, I see, so the disease isn't so bad that you can't vote. It's just bad enough to destroy the economy. Like, tomorrow you're going to see that word for word. And, like, we're already seeing it in other things. Like, military people don't count as citizens. Like, you basically sign away your rights. And then fucking Andrew Yang's out here going, well, I think military people should be able to get sick so that we have an immune section of society to go do things.
Jesus.
Fuck you.
That's so fucked up.
Mm-hmm. Like, if we want to make this work, we could be pouring money into the vaccine research. We could be making it so that it's not something that anybody gets a profit from.
Mm-hmm.
And every pharmaceutical company has to start doing testing so that we can get enough testing to ensure safety, in a few months instead of, like, a year and a half from now.
Right.
Because one company wants to make a killing off it.
Yeah. So, Wisconsin is basically just a microcosm of what's going on in this country.
Yeah.
What has been going on for years.
So right now, the Wisconsin numbers are 2,511.
Confirmed cases?
Yeah. Again, this is probably about 24 hours behind, but that's roughly. So, what do you want to guess the jump is gonna be? Like, we've been having nationwide an exponential growth of, like, 1.29. So, like, if we have a normal expectation of that, what did I just say it was? 2,500?
Something like that.
So, like, I would expect 3,200 tomorrow-ish, right? So, I don't know, the states are...
And it's going to take a
up.
few weeks for any of that to show up, because it takes a while for people to get symptoms and all of that.
Yeah. So I'm
it's probably going to lead to a huge increase of cases.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's
I'm really hoping that most people don't show up, because that's just a fucking health hazard, and people are going to fucking die because our politicians are irresponsible children.
Yeah, I don't understand what... Like, if you want to go with the idea that voting works, and, like, I don't think the system functions, I don't think there's really necessarily any reason to participate in any of this. But if you want to go with the idea that voting is worthwhile, and any of this means anything, absentee ballots should be universal.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you plan to be absent or not, every single person that registers to vote should be mailed a ballot, and the voting registration cutoff should be the point where you can get a ballot and get it back before the voting deadline.
Right. Yeah.
And, like, I know that would mean that we don't get to make a giant dog and pony show about the whole thing. We don't get to have, like, oh, tonight we're gonna know who won the primary, because we'd have to wait for ballots to come in. But, like, who gives a shit? Voting doesn't need to be reality TV.
I thought everything had to be reality TV.
Well, I mean, in America it does, but...
Right.
I don't know. We can solve these problems. We just don't want to, because we don't give a shit, because it's not real. None of this, like, fucking matters to your life. They're enlisting you in a war against richer people. Fuck
I mean, it matters in our lives. It just doesn't matter to the people in charge. That it matters in our lives.
Well, I mean, you show up and you risk your life for people that don't give a shit
like,
about you. Like,
voting itself isn't gonna,
Yeah.
Yeah. What you said.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay. So it's just ranting out of frustration of, the shit that is our lives here.
Yep. Hopefully you live in a state where, you've already voted, or if you haven't, you're either able to vote by mail or, just stay inside.
They figured out how printers work so they could send enough cards. Because $45 of card stock is just too outrageously expensive.
It's horrible. How are you going to pay for that?
Yeah. Yeah. Who's going to pay for it? Jesus. Like,
right.
Fucking do it and bill me. I don't give a shit.
Alright, well, we'll see you guys next time. Solidarity, comrades.